This house doesn't accept trash like you. Get out. That line came from my husband, standing in the doorway of the house. 2 days later, that same man and his precious mother were the ones shaking in fear, begging me not to ruin their lives. As always, before we dive into a story with an ending that's going to feel so satisfying, let's do a quick roll call. Type present and tell me which city you're watching this story from in the comments. For everyone who's already liked and subscribed, I pray that God makes your problems easier, widens your income, and keeps you healthy. Thank you, my friends. Now, listen carefully to my story. When I say I pretended to be bankrupt, I don't mean some little prank. I mean, I told my husband that my company, the one that had been feeding his whole family for years, was completely destroyed. My name is Claire. I inherited a construction company from my dad. It was in my name, all the shares, all the assets. When I married my husband, Ethan, I trusted him so much that I let him help manage some of it. Bad decision number one. My mother-in-law, Margaret, never liked that I was the one with the money. In front of other people, she'd brag, "My son is helping run a big company." Behind my back, she'd say things like, "You're lucky my son married you or you'd have no status at all." I swallowed all of that for years. I told myself, whatever, as long as my marriage is okay. We had 2 kids together, Noah and Emma. For them, I kept quiet when Ethan spent too much. I kept quiet when Margaret walked through my house like she owned it. I kept quiet when they pressured me to just sign documents I barely had time to read because I was juggling the business and the kids. But then I began to notice things that didn't add up. A loan in the company's name that I never approved. A life insurance policy Ethan forgot to mention, where I was the insured person and Margaret was the beneficiary. My signature appearing on bank forms that I knew I never touched. The first real red flag came from someone innocent, my own son. One night I was tucking Noah into bed when he whispered, "Mom, Grandma said if something happens to you, we'll live in this house forever and Dad will be rich. Why would something happen to you?" My hands went cold. I didn't know what to answer, so I kissed his forehead and said, "Don't worry about that, honey. Mom's not going anywhere." But in my head, I was thinking, all right, that's it. Something is very wrong. The next day, I went to my dad's old lawyer, a man named Thomas. He'd known me since I was a kid. I showed him the weird loan, the insurance policy, the documents with my signature. He stared at them for a long time and said, "Claire, some of these signatures are forged, and this insurance with your mother-in-law as the beneficiary, paired with how much they'd get if something you suddenly weren't around, this is dangerous." "Are you saying they want to take me out?" I asked quietly. He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me in a way that made my stomach twist. "Let's say this, you have to protect yourself. And if you want to see who really loves you and who just loves your money, we can set that up too." That's when the idea started. First, with Thomas's help, I quietly moved the real company assets, the crucial shares and properties, into a protected trust that only I controlled. On paper, it looked like the company was sinking, losing contracts, hit with a fake lawsuit we prepared as a cover, while the real money was already safe. Then I pulled some money out in cash and put it somewhere only I knew. Then I called Ethan. "Something happened," I told him on the phone, acting like I couldn't breathe properly. "The company, it's gone. I'm bankrupt. The accounts are frozen. We might lose everything." There was a pause, a long one. Finally, he said, "What? How could you be so careless?" Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "We'll figure this out together." My heart already knew the answer, but I pushed the plan forward. For the next few days, I stayed at a hotel saying I was handling lawyers. In reality, I was staying low, watching what he and Margaret would do. They didn't disappoint. In that short time, they called my so-called hated younger sibling, my half-sister Chloe, and told her I had ruined their lives and run away with the last of the money. I only know this because Chloe screen recorded the calls and later showed them to me. At that moment, though, I was still playing my role. After a few days, I went home with a small suitcase, dressed in simple clothes, no makeup, carrying myself like someone who had lost everything. Ethan opened the door, looked me up and down, and his face twisted. "Why are you here?" I said, "This is my home. Our kids are here. I just need a bit of time to fix things with the company. I'll talk to the bank. He cut me off with that shout that will probably stay in my memory until I'm old and gray. "This house doesn't accept trash like you. Get out." I froze on the spot. For a second, I couldn't say anything. My voice came out small. "Trash? Do you know how embarrassed I am? Everyone knows you screwed up your father's company. Do you want me and the kids to end up on the street because of you? Get out. I'm filing for divorce. I'll show the court how irresponsible you are." My heart just broke, not because of the divorce threat, but because he didn't even hesitate.
The worst part? I saw our daughter, Emma, peeking from behind the stairs, eyes wide, watching her dad throw her mom out like a piece of garbage. I picked up my suitcase with shaking fingers and walked away. In my head, I was thinking, "Okay, you chose your side. Don't cry now, Claire. You wanted to see his real face. Now you've seen it." With nowhere official to go, I went to the next place that used to call itself my family, my mother-in-law's house. Margaret opened the door, looking me up and down like I'd dragged mud into her hallway. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "Ethan kicked me out," I said honestly. "I just need a place to sleep for a few days. I'm trying to fix the company's problems. I don't have anywhere else to go." Her lips curled. "I don't know you," she said, voice cold. "Get your feet out of here now." I actually laughed. I didn't mean to. It just came out, this dry, hurt laugh. "You don't know me? I've been paying your medical bills for 3 years," she sniffed. "That's your responsibility as a daughter-in-law. You think you bought me with money? Now that you're broke, I don't need you. Don't come back here again." She literally closed the door in my face. I stood there on her porch, hugging my suitcase, feeling like the ground under me wasn't solid anymore. I pulled out my phone and stared at my contacts. My cousins? They lived in another city. Old college friends? Too awkward to show up scared and broke after years of barely talking. My mom's family? Complicated. And then there was one name I stared at for a long time. Chloe, my younger half-sister, the one I hated. We grew up in the same house, but under different clouds. She was the younger one, the one my stepmom always spoiled. She got into stupid relationships, borrowed money, dropped out of college once. I was always the responsible one who fixed everything. I'd called her useless more than once. I told her she was just decoration to look impressive when she worked at a fancy office for a few months and then quit. We yelled, we threw words like knives. I stopped inviting her to my house after one big fight where she told me, "You're not my mom. Stop talking like you own me just because you have money." In my head, she was just another problem, so you can imagine how much it hurt my pride to scroll to her name. But my options were gone, and a tiny voice in my head said, "If she laughs and hangs up, at least you'll know it's really just you and God now." I pressed call. She picked up on the third ring. "Hello?" "Chloe," I said, and my voice broke a little. "It's me." There was a pause. "What's wrong? You sound weird." I need somewhere to stay," I said. "Just for a while. I'll explain later. If you don't want to, it's okay. I'll figure something out. She cut in. "Where are you?" outside Margaret's house. Stay there, Claire. I'm coming." She hung up before I could argue. 15 minutes later, her small car pulled up in front of the house. She jumped out and saw my face, and her expression went from annoyed to furious in 3 seconds. "Did she really not let you in?" Chloe asked. I nodded. Chloe rolled her eyes, stormed to the door, and rang Margaret's bell like she wanted to break it. Margaret opened, ready to yell, then saw Chloe. "What now?" Margaret snapped. "You threw her out?" Chloe said, jerking her thumb at me. "After everything she did for you? This is family business. You have no right to interfere." "Exactly," Chloe shot back. "She is family. You are just a leech with a fancy cardigan." I almost choked. "Chloe, stop," I whispered, tugging her sleeve. Chloe ignored me. "Don't worry, I'll take her. You won't have to pretend you don't know her anymore. Keep that fake perfume and fake dignity for yourself." She grabbed my suitcase and practically shoved me into her car. When we finally got to her small apartment, she made me tea and sat me on the couch. "Start talking," she said. So I told her. I told her about the bankruptcy, about Ethan's reaction, about Margaret. I left out the part about the assets being secretly safe and the lawyer plan. I needed to see if she was really on my side. When I finished, I expected her to say something like, "Well, you were always controlling anyway." Instead, she got quiet, then walked to her bedroom and came back with her phone. "Good," she said, "because I have something to show you." She opened a file and hit play. It was a screen recording of a video call from Ethan and Margaret 2 days before I came home. Chloe had been on speaker, and she had recorded it. "Ethan: Chloe, you know your sister has always been dramatic. She ran away with company money and left us with debts. If she comes to you, don't take her in. She has to learn her lesson."
"Yes, if you help us, we won't forget it. When we get the insurance payout and the house is in Ethan's name, we can help you with your debts, too." "Insurance? What insurance?" Margaret laughed in that ugly way I knew too well. "Let's just say if something happens to Claire soon, Ethan will be a very rich man. You don't need to know the details." Even added, "We already positioned everything. The company's collapse will look like her fault. She's been working too hard. You know how unstable she can seem. The court will believe she was irresponsible." I heard my own breath catch in my throat as I listened. They weren't just willing to throw me out. They were clearly planning for me to be gone for good. The video ended. My hands were shaking so hard I put the tea down before I spilt it. "You recorded this?" I whispered. Chloe nodded. "At first I did it because I thought, okay, let me have proof that they're trash when I tell you. Then I realized it sounded worse, so I talked to someone at my office." I stared at her. "You're still working at that office?" She gave me a flat look. "Yes, the one you called just something to show off with. It's a corporate law firm, Claire. I've been a paralegal there for 2 years. I guess you were too busy handling your empire to notice." That hit really hard. I went quiet for a few seconds. "I didn't know." "Yeah," she said. "Anyway, the lawyer I work under, he said this recording is explosive. With the right context and other documents, this could look like insurance fraud and an attempt to get rid of you for good." I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. In that moment, all my anger at her, all my pride melted into one clear thought. I need her, and she's the only one who showed up for me when I was broke. "Chloe," I said, looking at her, "will you help me?" She smiled, just a small one. "I already started." The next day, we went to meet Thomas, my dad's lawyer, and Chloe's boss, Mr. Reynolds, who specialized in corporate and family law. I explained everything, this time including the part where my bankruptcy was a controlled setup to see what Ethan and Margaret would do. Thomas wasn't thrilled at my stunt, but he also admitted it had revealed their true colors faster than any investigation could. Reynolds listened, fingers steepled. "So your husband and mother-in-law think you're broke," he summed up. "They're planning to push for a divorce, paint you as irresponsible, and collect an insurance payout if you disappear. They already tried to bribe your sister to isolate you. They're probably also trying to move assets behind your back." Chloe nodded. "We already pulled public records. Yesterday, they tried to initiate a transfer of the marital home solely into Ethan's name using a debt settlement story. They booked an appointment at a notary for 2 days from now to finalize everything." I stared at her. "How do you even know that?" She shrugged. "Law office, remember? We have people everywhere. And also, Ethan is not as smart as he thinks. He used one of the firms we often deal with for property transfers." I couldn't help it. A short, humorless laugh escaped me. "Of course he did." Reynolds tapped the table. "Okay, here's what we're going to do. Since your assets are already in a trust and your bankruptcy story is only partial, you're actually safe. The house, according to your prenup, is in your name, correct?" "Yes, my dad insisted on that. Ethan hated it, but he signed." "Good. We're going to let them walk right into their own trap. You're going to show up at that notary meeting." "What?" I asked, "as the broke idiot who signs everything away?" "No," Reynolds said calmly, "as the wife who pretends to still be broken, desperate, and easily bullied until it's time to flip the table. We'll have the notary, us, and a few witnesses there. We'll also bring the recording, your asset documents, and proof of the insurance policy. If they push you, insult you, or admit anything, it's all extra seasoning." Chloe leaned forward. "And I can testify that they tried to bribe me to abandon you." Thomas added, "We may also invite a representative from the insurance company. They'll be very interested to hear what Margaret said on that call." I thought about Ethan's face when he threw me out. I thought about Emma's eyes when she saw it. I thought about Noah asking why Grandma said they'd be rich if something happened to me. "Let's do it," I said. The next day, I walked into that notary office wearing the same simple clothes, hair pulled back, no makeup, looking like I'd barely slept. Ethan was already there, sitting with Margaret in the waiting area. He looked annoyed when he saw me, like I was a problem that wouldn't go away. "You're late," he snapped. "I had to borrow money for the bus," I said quietly, playing my part. "You emptied our joint account, remember?" He didn't even look guilty. "Good," Margaret said. "At least she's learning to live within her means. Maybe the next husband will be smarter." Inside, I wanted to roll my eyes, but I kept my head down. The notary, Mr. Harris, came out and called us in. What Ethan didn't know was that Harris was fully briefed and Reynolds and Thomas were already inside, posing as assistants. We sat around the table. Harris got a stack of documents in front of Ethan. "So this is the agreement for the property transfer and debt acknowledgement." Ethan nodded confidently. "Yes, Claire understands she destroyed our finances. She's going to sign the house over to me so I can take responsibility for the debts. It's the least she can do for the children." There it was, the role reversal. In his story, he was the hero cleaning up my mess. Harris glanced at me. "Mrs. Claire, do you agree with your husband's explanation?"
I swallowed, looking small. I just want my kids to be taken care of. If signing this helps, then..." Ethan smirked slightly. Margaret added, "She's lucky we're even willing to protect the children after what she did." Reynolds cleared his throat, playing innocent. "Sorry, before she signs anything, I'd like to ask a few questions, if that's okay, Mr. Harris." Ethan frowned. "Who are you?" "I'm legal counsel for Claire," Reynolds said smoothly. "She reached out when the company collapsed. I'm here to make sure she understands everything." Margaret scoffed.
With what money did she hire a lawyer? I lifted my chin a bit. Even broke people can get help, Margaret. Harris nodded. Of course, it's standard to make sure both parties fully understand. Mr. Reynolds, go ahead. Reynolds picked up the top document and flipped through it. So, according to this, he said, Claire acknowledges causing all marital debts, and in exchange, she transfers full ownership of the house to Ethan, after which Ethan will let her see the children when convenient and possibly assist her financially if he feels like it. He raised an eyebrow. That's a bit one-sided, don't you think? Ethan shrugged. She ruined everything. It's there. Reynolds smiled slightly. Right, and what if I told you Claire's company is not actually bankrupt and all her major assets are protected? Ethan stared. What? Margaret laughed loudly. What kind of joke is this? She told us everything was gone. I took a deep breath and finally dropped the act. I told you it was gone because I needed to see how quickly you would throw me away. Turns out the answer was immediately. Silence. Reynolds continued calmly, sliding a different file on the table. This is the trust document showing the actual state of Claire's assets. As you can see, the company is stable, the properties are safe, and the accounts you thought were frozen are very much not. Your little plan to grab the house is based on a fake story you never bothered to check. Ethan's face started to pale. That doesn't prove anything. She's still irresponsible. Thomas, who had been quiet until then, spoke up. There is more. Claire, would you like to play the recording now? My hands were steady as I pulled out my phone and hit play, the room filled with Ethan's own voice from 2 days ago, talking to Chloe. Chloe, you know your sister has always been dramatic. She ran away with company money and left us with debts. If she comes to you, don't take her in. She has to learn her lesson. Then Margaret's voice about the insurance. Let's just say if something happens to Claire soon, Ethan will be a very rich man. I watched Ethan's throat move as he swallowed. Margaret gripped her purse so hard her knuckles went white. When the audio ended, Reynolds looked straight at them. Do you realize what this sounds like? He asked softly, combined with the fact that you took out a large life insurance policy on Claire with Margaret as the beneficiary without clearly informing her, and then immediately tried to isolate her and move the house into Ethan's sole name? This isn't just a family argument. This looks a lot like an attempt to profit if something happened to her. Margaret exploded. That recording is fake. Chloe's voice came from the doorway. No, it's not. Everyone turned. Chloe stepped into the room, face calm, holding a folder. She called me, she said to Harris. They both did, tried to convince me to cut off my own sister. They offered me money from the insurance and new house if I helped. I work in a law firm. I know how to preserve evidence. I have the original files, device logs, and my supervisor here can confirm how I stored them. Right on cue, Mr. Reynolds nodded. Yes, and we have metadata and backup copies. If necessary, a forensic expert can verify all of it. Ethan stood up, voice loud. You're twisting everything. We were just worried she would run away again. The insurance is normal. Lots of couples have that. Reynolds tilted his head. Lots of couples don't hide the policy from the person insured or make their mother-in-law the sole beneficiary or talk about when something happens soon with a smile. Harris, the notary, finally spoke up, his tone sharp now. Mr. Ethan, Mrs. Margaret, given the seriousness of what I'm hearing, I will not be processing any property transfer today. In fact, I will be taking a note of this meeting in case it's needed later. Mrs. Claire, do you wish to continue with any of these documents? I looked at Ethan. Really looked at him. The man I'd shared a bed with, the father of my children, the one who called me trash at our front door. No, I said, I'm not signing anything that gives them more power to hurt me or my kids. Ethan pointed a shaking finger at me. You can't do this. I'll tell the court you abandoned your family during a crisis. I'll say you're unstable. Sure, I said, and I'll tell them about the forged signatures on those beg forms and play this recording and explain the secret insurance and bring my children who heard their grandmother say they'd be rich if something happens to me. He froze. Margaret finally spoke, voice breaking. Claire, you're misunderstanding. We were scared. We didn't mean it like that. We were joking.
Nobody jokes about someone being gone for good. Nobody jokes about turning their own child's unalive into a payday. The room got quiet. Reynolds slid one last document across the table. By the way, Mr. Ethan, this is the prenup your father-in-law insisted on. It states clearly that the house belongs solely to Claire, and in the event of divorce due to your wrongdoing, you are not entitled to any of her properties. He snatched it, scanned it, and his face turned from pink to gray. She tricked me, he muttered. Margaret whispered, "You said you read it." Harris added calmly, "Also, if any of these forged signatures are proven to be yours, there may be criminal consequences. I'd advise you to get your own lawyer. Not here, though."
Ethan looked like he might pass out. "Claire," he said suddenly, voice soft, fake sweet like I'd heard so many times before. "Baby, listen, we can fix this. We got carried away. We were stressed. You know how Mom is. She talks too much. Let's go home. We'll tear up all these papers. We'll start over." There it was, the fake sweetness after the attack. I felt this weird calm settle over me. "Home?" I asked. "You mean the place you said doesn't accept trash like me?" He flinched. Margaret started crying, loud, messy sobs. "I'm old, Claire. Don't do this to me. We were just scared about the money. You know I have my health issues. How will I survive if you turn against me?" Reynolds leaned toward me and whispered, "Role reversal, classic." I stood up slowly. "I'm not turning against you," I said to Margaret. "You did that first. You turned against the person who paid your bills, who raised your grandchildren, the second you thought she had nothing left." I looked at Ethan. "As for you, I'll see you in court for divorce and for custody. That recording, the forged signatures, the insurance, it's all going to be part of the file." "You can't take my kids," he whispered, now really shaking. "I'm not taking them," I said. "I'm protecting them from people who thought their mother's disappearance would be a good business move." Harris closed the folder in front of him. "This meeting is over." Ethan tried to reach for my hand. "Claire, please." I stepped back. Chloe was already at my side, hand gently on my arm like a wall between us. As we walked out of the notary office, I heard Margaret's voice behind us, half screaming, half sobbing. "What are we going to do now? What if she sends us to jail? Ethan, do something." For once, he had no answer. 2 days earlier, they'd thrown me out like I was nothing. Now they were the ones terrified I'd throw them to the wolves. Did I send them to jail? No, I didn't have to. The investigation that followed for the forged documents and insurance fraud scared them so much they settled fast. Ethan agreed to divorce with no claim on my assets. I got full custody of the kids, with his visits supervised for a while until the court was sure he wasn't danger. The court also ordered him to attend counseling because of his manipulative behavior. Margaret, she lost her perfect, respected elder reputation when the rest of the family heard the recording. The same relatives she used to gossip with now avoided her. She went from bragging about her rich daughter-in-law to hiding at home, afraid someone would ask what really happened. As for me, I moved out of that house and into a new place with my kids. We redecorated together. I gave Emma a starry ceiling and Noah a corner full of dinosaur posters. They laughed more. They slept better. And Chloe? I stopped calling her useless forever. One afternoon, as we sat in my new living room watching Noah and Emma build a fort out of cushions, I turned to her. "I'm sorry for every time I talked down to you, for thinking your job was just decoration. You saved my life." She shrugged, eyes a little shiny. "Took you long enough to notice I have a brain." I laughed. "So, do you want a job?" I asked. "What?" "In my company," I said. "I need someone I can trust, who knows law and knows how snakes operate. You're perfect for that." She smiled slowly. On one condition. What? From now on, I'm not the younger sibling you hate. I'm your partner. And if some guy ever talks to you like that again, I get to personally throw him out. Deal, I said, and we shook on it. From everything that happened, I learned that when your money disappears, the truth about people appears fast. Real family is the one that pulls up in a small car and says, "Stay there, I'm coming," not the one sitting in your big house waiting for an insurance payout. So if something feels wrong, don't stay quiet. Protect yourself, know your rights, and don't be scared to walk away from people who would sell your life for their comfort. If you've been through something similar or want to share your own story, write it in the comments. Don't forget to share this video with your friends, hit the like button, and subscribe so you don't miss the next stories.